Yeah, zip your jacket first.
I'd like to, yeah. It's cold in here.
I'm telling you.
Just in case it starts raining. Yeah, that's... Is that operating? It's so freaking quiet. It's probably for the best. Okay, welcome to the second Saturday Artist Talk. I'm here with Leila Weefur, creator of Between Beauty and Horror, which we're all sitting in. So thank you for accommodating the installation. We're giving away a little too much, I think, with the lighting. But at the end of the show, we'll switch it all back to the way you're supposed to experience the exhibition. So there's a couple seats up front. For those of you kind of sneaking in. This talk series kind of was developed in conjunction with the Oakland Art Murmur as a way to kind of create legacy and blend additional conversation to an installation. The purpose is less about kind of talking about this art, but more about giving you a little bit of a window into the artist and to aggregate space and to kind of the things that we're thinking about and the things that we're talking about as we're putting exhibitions in. So hopefully we'll talk for half hour, 45 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions. And those of you that kind of want to ask some more things and dig a little deeper, you will be welcome to. So,
hi everybody.
Yes, good morning. Also, there are plenty of snacks down the hallway, including some delicious mimosa, if anybody would like some.
Only for 21.
Only 21 or over, which I can tell by who's here. There's at least one. No, that's not 21. So, I guess, working with you, Leila, over these last 2 years, kind of, and thinking about this exhibition, I guess, I think once the early conversations trickled in about like what could happen here and what you would do.
That was like 3 years ago.
Yeah, so that's like 3 years ago. How do you feel like this project grew from your previous projects that you were working on? Could you talk a little bit about some of the projects that you were working on immediately before this and how they bled into this?
Immediately before?
Yeah, you worked with there was the piece at Collab, and then your Mills and Fay show, which I think would tie directly to what this was about.
Yes.
And then maybe there's things that are not.
And then the Growler.
The Growler show, right, of course.
I've done like a major project. I've done a project a year, basically. I sort of set out to not do more than that so that I can like make sure first I work in video, so it's hard to do something of this scale and multiplicity. And so my Mills exhibition was kind of the beginning of me like exploring this idea of the tactile imagination. And in that exhibition I had several hanging boxes. There was no sound, and I projected through the boxes the images of me manipulating fruit. And so I would like squeeze the fruit. I was injecting the fruit with ink. There was an apple hanging from a noose, and it was bleeding up the rope instead of so I was really interested in like how these materials could be surrogates for the black body without having to use black bodies. That was that was me trying to develop some kind of aesthetic sensibility that I could then work into my work slowly over time. And I guess the main part, which is what bled into this show, is I was showing those videos in a large black box that had a pane of glass installed. One of these, actually.
Specifically
one of those. And I was really interested in this idea that people could see glimmers of the video in this pane of glass, but also see reflections of themselves and see the people on the other side of the glass. So it was bodies watching bodies watching bodies. And always trying to consider how to like work that structurally, architecturally into my work in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're like by looking at your work, you're kind of forcing people to really specifically look at themselves and look at how they're looking at the work and how they're participating. And that was so the catalyst for that was Mills, but kind of has grown that piece of work, which I think is I don't want to.
Did you see the Mill show?
I did not see the Mill show. I mean, I saw documentation.
I remember being really disappointed that you didn't see that show. Because I wanted to show in this gallery, and I was like, you didn't even see my MFA show, Conrad? I was like one of those disappointed kids, but it was fun.
Yeah. I forget who it was. Oh, great, thanks. The embarrassing moment just will continue. No, I think what excited me about like even just seeing the documentation is just how well you were creating these textured moments and how visually appealing you were making something that under the surface was difficult and tremendously sad to be a part of, but you were doing it in such a juicy way, not a pun, but specifically juicy.
Say more.
So Mills was your MFA.
Yeah.
What was your undergrad?
So I went to Cal State LA and I studied film, like traditional filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was a theory based. It was like half theory based and half like practical production based.
Oh wow! What was the kind of work that you produced when you were doing that?
I mean, you know what people produce.
Undergrad. No, come on. There was some like spark that led to something else.
I worked, actually, I was shooting with film at the time. I shot a 16mm short where this woman was dressed in some of like not an African flag, an American flag, and she undressed herself in front of the camera. She was outside. She burned her clothes, which had the American flag on it. So it was very like underground work.
Yeah, right.
I want to make a bold statement.
Yeah, right.
Burn the flag.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would still say that my work is still dramatic in that way. I'm still trying to make these bold statements, but it's more nuanced now.
Right. Well, I mean, do you think that just came with experience, or do you think that did people respond to that early work negatively, or just?
Oh yeah, I think my professor at the time, I don't think he was very fond of the fact that I burned the flag. In fact, I remember him saying that he was a vet.
Oh.
And yeah, but I kind of enjoyed that reaction.
Yeah, of course.
So it didn't dissuade me.
Of course. What made you want to go to film school in the first place?
I don't know. It's something I always knew I wanted to do since I was a kid. My dad was kind of obsessed with photography, and I mean in a very like dad way, but he loved fancy cameras. And I became fascinated with his fascination in the cameras, and slowly but surely I asked my mom to get my own camera. I would use his camera to make music videos using my brother. And that was like basically all I did throughout high school. I made these like really silly documentaries. I think my senior thesis in high school was the history of hip hop.
Oh, nice.
So I was like, I think I also did one about like food capitalism, you know.
And so and you grew up in Oakland.
I grew up in Oakland, yeah.
And so when you were, you had this this early life dream of becoming a filmmaker. What made you switch to go and get your MFA rather than go into a practical MFA for filmmaking?
Yeah, I still ask myself that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the push? Was it to come back to the Bay Area and go to Mills, or was it to?
Well, I hated LA when I was there. I did a lot of odd jobs in the film industry. I was like a production assistant, script supervisor, and I was treated horribly.
Right.
Because then, at that time in Hollywood, it wasn't cool to be black in the film industry.
Right.
I mean, right now, there's like Ryan Coogler, you know,
Cool.
he's making everybody seem cool and it would do for that. But at that time, those people weren't present, and there were literally people telling the entire crew to give me their trash, even though that wasn't my job. And so those moments kind of made me like sour, and I came back to Oakland, and I worked a commercial photography job for a long time, and I knew that I wanted to keep making film work, but I didn't want to do it in the traditional way. I wanted to make something that wasn't like the classical Hollywood narrative, and I thought going to art school could push me out of those boundaries.
When you were just like still stuck thinking about that, or you kind of you saw that as a like that art school would take you and send you someplace else, or you?
I had no idea where art school would take me, but I knew that it would take me somewhere. I knew that it would challenge the way that I was thinking about image making, and I wanted to just insert myself in an environment where I could do nothing but think about the work that I want to make. What
was like the first thing that you made? So I mean, and Mills has some equipment, right?
What are these questions?
What do you mean?
No one's ever asked me this stuff.
So yeah,
great.
That's great. Then now you'll have it on
no,
record.
I haven't thought about this in a long time.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. See, that was the goal. Have a sip of mimosa. This talk was built on mimosa.
Okay.
I'll share that with you sometime. I'm sure there's several artist talks where I talk about it. But yeah, no, seriously, what was the thing that you made? Like, what was the jump? Like, what was the
first thing that I made?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That project still haunts me.
In a
good and bad way.
Yeah.
I made this little animation called Denning Boulevard. I showed it at the Aggregate Space Animation.
Yeah.
Screening the film festival. And I made that my first semester in grad school, and I basically built this set out of plaster, and then I had someone like make these little dolls that were the figures of Oscar Grant, Trayvon Martin, and Emmett Till. And so in this little film, it's basically the set that I built was supposed to be the afterlife for where they existed, and I wrote this little piece that ended up being a voiceover and the overall like narrative texture for the piece. And it was the first project that I ever showed in a gallery.
Which gallery?
Smack Melon in Brooklyn.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I thought it was like kind of triumphant.
Totally.
And after that, a scholar wrote about it in Film Quarterly, and since then it's been traveling around around the country, and he like works it into all of the symposiums, and he's kind of a big deal in the like black cinema. But I hate it. I hate that project so much, and I hate that.
What do you hate about it?
I mean, looking at that work and then looking at the work that I'm making now, it's kind of incongruous. It's like
it is to you, but I think it's just
maybe not the ideas,
right?
But the execution. It's like it's grad school work. Yeah. Right. It's like
it's very scrappy. It's very literal.
Exactly. It's very literal. It's very scrappy. I made it in like a quick amount of time. I had never built a set for animation in my life.
Right, but there's a bit of a punk aesthetic to it.
Yeah,
like
of course.
Even the way you shot it and the way like the colors that you chose are they read Oakland.
Yes. Yes.
Like there's something.
It's like a love-hate relationship. I'm really glad that I made it because I was passionate about what the story. I was passionate about talking about the deaths of these 3 black men. At the time, I was really sad. But the execution of it, I'm embarrassed every time it has to screen somewhere.
That's the wrong attitude. You could always remake it live action or something.
I don't think so. But I think everyone has to have that kind of project.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that it's still floating around like out there is pretty awesome.
But that's the thing that people like to fixate on. It's kind of like, wow, okay.
Well, not for long.
We'll see.
Yeah. So you obviously you took your these kind of harsher ideas and you started including this more cinematic quality. I mean, the piece that you did as your MFA show, was that shot by you, or did you bring in somebody else?
It was shot by me.
Yeah.
Everything up until this project was shot by me. Yeah.
It's amazing how similar the aesthetic. I mean, if we're just people like the shot structure, that's a very good direction.
It took a lot of work.
Yeah.
I knew that was like the next step in my career for me, because I always like to give myself these challenges to work with each project. I needed to try something new and something different to break me out of the habit, because it's boring to keep making the same work over and over again.
Right.
And so with this one, I said I want to work with a cinematographer, and I also want to work with sound people.
Yeah.
And I think
success.
Well, I think success in the sense that I pushed myself to like understand what it took to be able to keep my aesthetic sensibility while working with other people,
right?
While not actually having control over the physical camera while on set, but being able to use my words and like really plan out from A to Z what I want each shot to look like.
Right.
And it worked well.
But you must have had some training in your undergrad film kind of doing
to direct.
Yeah, just like
you don't really know how to direct until you do it.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it took me knowing what I wanted based on all the other projects that I've done to know what this should look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When did installation come into play? Do you remember like the first time you were like, it's not just a film, it's something that needs to be experienced. Structural.
Yeah. I think that was also my first year of grad school. I was a lot of people in the Mills program, my professor, they were pushing me to do photographic work. And I knew I wanted to do that because it's really expensive to be a photographer. Not that it's not expensive to be a filmmaker, because it's just as expensive to buy a camera, but you have to buy a camera and print it out and frame it. And but I did want my images to have some kind of physical presence in the space. And I think the first iteration of installation that I ever did was like take cardboard boxes together and the shower curtain for a screen. And I had a good critique. I had a good crit day that day. And I was like, well, maybe this is like the beginnings of me figuring out how video can function in space and how it can respond to space and work with it.
I mean, what do you feel like is your goal of installation now? Like knowing, you've gotten progressively more aggressive with your installation.
Really aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, just just the step from Growlery to here.
Yeah.
The Growlery, you were doing cross projections in a room that had to be navigated, and you couldn't see things at the same time, and you couldn't. It wasn't particularly comfortable. It was a smaller room. It was made so that you couldn't have all the information at once. In that piece, I feel like you had to constantly be moving to keep keep the sound and keep the video active. And this is a similar thing where it's you're locking people into a situation where they cannot. They can hear everything happening, but they can't see everything happening at any point.
At certain points.
At certain points. But they don't know. Nobody knows that.
Some people figured it out.
Do they? I feel like a couple of people didn't figure it out and thought they were both the same video because they only looked behind your shoulder at that one moment when it's the same. Or there's a couple of moments when it's the same and missed out
on both sides.
On both sides because they thought it was just the same projection, which is so great. I love that stuff because then other people hear about it that it's more than that, and they like express this intense regret. Like, that's not like that's not what I enjoy, but I enjoy the idea that you're forcing people to like second guess, did they even see the work? When they did, they participated, and they loved it. They didn't get it all. They didn't know. And that's like, those are interesting games to play with the viewer that I really respect. Do you feel like this grows into something? Do you feel like this has a different iteration? Do you feel like this is it for Between Beauty and Horror? And
I don't think that it will ever look exactly like this ever again.
Yeah, I think that's likely.
Yeah. I think it could look a lot different. And I think that someone asked me the other day if I make site-specific work, and I don't think I really thought about my work in that way, but I guess I do. Like, from the Growlery show, like, I was really responding to the circular living room in the space. And with this, I had to work with the long gallery, and I knew that, I mean, because I've been in here so much, I tailored this wall specifically to fit the dimensions of the space. And I don't think that there will ever be another space that will be able to hold this work in the same way.
I mean, there would be. That's what we're putting.
I mean, they would have to literally rebuild Aggregate space.
I know who they can hire.
Yeah. But starting with the Males MFA show, I became really, really interested. This won't surprise you in control.
Yeah.
And control mechanisms, because I think that is the conversation. That's structural racism. Controlling people. And I wanted to do like a simulation of those control mechanisms in installation. But not like have people be so aware of the fact that they're being controlled. Because that's how racism works.
Right.
And so
I never went there with it, because I also am very interested in controlling, but I think of it from like providing the viewer an experience that is focused and is free from distraction. But maybe that's too creepily similar to racism.
Maybe. And I've always thought about the ways that we're controlled by like architecture, language, and the images around us. And I've always wanted to recreate that in a bunch of different ways. And I don't think that I've quite found the right way yet. I don't think it's successful yet. But I think that's the thing that drives me.
Right.
Like, how can I recreate the feeling that I feel every day being controlled by someone I don't know who's holding the control button. And I mean, Dorothy has said this about my work, that it's antiseptic.
I can explain that.
Yeah, Dorothy said my work is antiseptic. And what I think she means by that is what?
Yeah, start there.
I think in terms of like the production of my work is very clean. And even if you go back to my grad school work, I was like wearing surgical gloves. So I've always thought about this, like this, similarly to the structure and structural racism, how we don't, like the bodies that are controlling other bodies aren't always visible. There's like a distance. And trying to recreate this like antiseptic, like procedural feeling of being watched and being controlled.
Well, I mean, and you're doing that with your black camera movement.
Yeah.
The set, like the shots are all very similar. And you basically bounce between two types of shots.
Yes.
In this whole film.
Yeah.
And they're very, you're using that language of, it's like theatrical.
Yeah.
But
theatrical but filmic.
Yeah. Is that?
This is also the first project that I shot outside.
Oh.
Outside of a controlled environment.
Oh, okay. What was outside?
It's on that side of the.
Oh, right.
Wherever he's like smoking out.
Yeah.
That was also the third challenge for this piece. So sound, cinematographer, shoot outside. And how can I convey the feeling of control and fear and horror in this outside environment?
Did you study any particular horror films when you were prepping for this?
That's a good question.
I know you did. So.
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so.
I think you told me something like you try to watch a film a day.
I do try to. I wasn't as successful this time.
You were a little busy.
Yeah. I watched Mother with you.
Oh, that's right. But that couldn't be any more different than this. I mean, that movie is constantly chaotic.
Well, when we were applying for the grant, I was watching a lot of westerns.
Oh yeah.
Something that I watched or rewatched. I think I watched it like 5 different times. There Will Be Blood.
Oh yeah. That has a lot of static camera.
Yeah, static camera and control. Like he's a controlling figure in the whole piece. But another thing I watched like while making this was The Favorite.
Oh, okay. Which I still haven't seen. Shame on me.
You still haven't seen The Favorite?
Shame on me.
Yeah, I saw it 3 times in the theater, and
you'll see it a 4th time here.
Yeah, that's also very controlled. Like I'm obsessed with power dynamics in film and television, and how like the camera sort of works with those ideas, and how the camera also is playing a role in the power dynamics.
Well, I mean, in like traditionally horror, the camera is the role of the villain.
Sometimes.
It's pretty often. I mean, even like in like The Shining, like the camera kind of plays this kind of godlike nightmare. That kind of is the building rather than being, following the characters or something like that. But I mean, I'm not like talking the camera being Michael Myers running through the forest.
Right.
But I think
the camera's embodied in the larger film piece.
Yeah. That's really interesting to think about. I mean, did you storyboard this?
No.
You knew the shots, this kind of shots?
I wrote it out.
Oh, okay.
Like scene by scene. Pretty detailed, but no storyboard. That's a lot.
What was the editorial process like?
Just basically a detailed shot list and scripts for every scene.
And then when you were editing, you kind of knew what you had and what you kind of needed to go for.
I think my editing process is kind of intuitive. It's like I know what I want, but I also know that there has to be like moments that lead into it naturally. And I think with each project, I have this very specific idea of how it should look, and most of the time it's not going to look like that. But I think that this project came closer to how I envisioned anything that I've ever done.
What's your favorite shot?
In this?
Yeah.
The dream scene. The dream sequence. When they're spinning and laughing.
Oh. Yeah.
That's if this whole piece was just that, I'd be satisfied.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We're gonna keep that thing for a long time.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, actually this thing.
Yeah.
Conrad built me this really large rotating platform, and I knew that I wanted it for this scene in particular. And I knew you had no idea what I wanted it for. I'm like, I really needed this thing. And you're like, okay, I'll do it.
I think
no one else would have said yes to that.
I think it is more haunting with the gun. When the gun is getting when the character's further away from the camera and the gun is closer, and then they keep switching because of the force perspective, whatever wide lens you're using.
Broken up.
Nice. I love the shot of the reflection of the fork on the knife while it cuts through the blackberry. I think I'm a sucker for like high contrast, really crisp shots like that, and it's coming up. Something about that shot is just terrifying, despite it being just somebody cutting a raspberry, and it has or blackberry. I keep calling it raspberry. There's something just haunting about that shot. I mean, I guess we can just move on. Anyway, I love that shot, and I love the shot.
You know how long I searched the internet for the right kind of gold silverware? It's the funnest thing I've ever done.
We should actually, maybe that's the shot we try to get up with the other. No. Trying to get Leila to commit to an image to put on our thing. It's a negotiation.
It'll be hard.
So what's so can we talk a little bit about your writing? So last night you did a performance that had almost no information. I think everybody came expecting to see you do some sort of artist talk along with the performance, and was not expecting it to be like a really well scripted, like dual person performance with clips of the film that interrupted and kind of tied the piece of the performance together. And you launched this book that was only given to the people after they completed participating in the performance, and then followed an additional set of rules. And I personally felt like it was a great addition to this exhibition, and actually kind of strengthening and clarifying some of the symbology of the work. And writing is a huge part of your life. I mean, you're an editor by trade, partially.
Not an editor.
Story editor. Is that what is the
at our practice?
Yeah.
I help produce podcasts,
right,
and videos, which is what I always do.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're right. But so and your work with Black Aesthetic obviously is writing driven and lecture driven, performance driven to some extent. I mean, can you talk about how that? Like, do you see that work as like secondary to your film work, or
which work?
Tertiary? Like you're
writing.
writing and you're performing, you're speaking through that writing.
I mean, it's difficult because I can't divorce the two projects.
Okay.
To me, it's all one project.
Right.
All of my work is like all of the elements of a film distilled into different parts.
Right.
So when I think about the book part, the ephemeral part of it, the printed matter, it's like the credits,
right,
or like the intertitles, or the script, because there is a script in here, and part of the dream sequence is a section of the larger piece that I wrote for the book. I mean, I think I've always considered myself a writer to a certain extent, but I've never really published until like maybe a couple of years ago.
Right.
And I went to Howard University as part of my undergrad too, for journalism. And so writing has always been a part of my work in some way. I just never knew how to give it life outside of the visual work.
Right.
And I knew I didn't want to pitch stories to magazines, because I don't think that they would publish what I'm writing.
Yeah.
Because it's not journalistic work. It's also not poetry. It's more like experimental prose.
Yeah. Right.
And I think it provides people with more context to the work, so they're able to leave the gallery or the space that the video is showing in and read and ruminate on the concept, the larger concept of the work on their own, alone, by themselves. They don't have my voice like interfering with their thoughts. And I also think like work should travel inside the gallery.
Right.
I mean, they can't buy this in a DVD, you know.
Right.
So there has to be a way for the work to travel with people that is at no cost to the viewer.
Right.
And that's
great. What's I was going to ask about what's happening next.
Don't ask that. Don't ask that.
So, Leila, what's happening next? No, I mean, like, where do you see, what do you see the next phase of your work becoming? Like, not like specifically what's next, but like, what do you hope happens? You know, with either this body of work or like with the next iteration of it, or
Something different.
yeah. But you don't have a plan currently. Little ruminations. Nothing you're gonna give away.
I've never been the kind of person that had like a 10, 5 or 10 year plan.
Right.
Things just happen.
What's the next more specifically, what's the next thing you want to try out film-wise? Now that you've shot outside and you've shot as a cinematographer and you work with sound.
You just have to wait and see.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really given myself those parameters. I think that right now I'm in a period of like exploration and really wanting to take time and read.
Yeah.
Because we all work so much
Right.
that I want to like not be thinking about a project
Right.
for a while, so the project can just come to me.
Well, I mean, this has been a heavy 6 months, right?
Yeah.
For this, plus your other stuff.
Yeah. And I think I really feel comfortable being in this space of not knowing what's next and not knowing what I'm going to do, because I think that whatever I do next, it's going to be challenging. And it will be hopefully very different from this project. Even if it means like thinking of how else this project can exist in another space.
Yeah.
I don't know until that challenge presents itself.
Right.
But I'm excited for that possibility. Anyone knows a place that needs an installation, let me know.
Well, I think.
And I also want to say, before we open it up, I have to thank my sound composers, Ken, Josh, and Yari. Yari's in the audience. If you have any sound-related questions, he can answer them. Yari, raise your hand.
Yeah, so before I open it up, I want to announce that we'll be having one more. So some of you might not know we're losing this space in August, and we're seeking out both new partnerships, new fundraising opportunities, and new people to work with. So we're having one more proper aggregate exhibition, which is Toria Cummings' show, for which there will be a artist talk on April 13th at 8 a.m. The space will be also very different than this.
It opens April 5th.
Yeah, the show opens April 5th.
6 to 10 p.m.
And then,
Is it?
yep, and then closes on May 3rd, but I think we're going to extend it one more week. And then
Do I get an extension?
it's been scheduled already. Sorry. But you have 2 more weeks. You have 6 solid days.
Do I have 2 more weekends?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Your show comes out on the 22nd.
23rd.
3rd.
23rd.
22nd was the last public day, or is it the 23rd was the last one?
You printed the 23rd.
Then that's probably the last one. Anyway, so we're going to do one more artist talk with Toria Cummings on April 13th in the morning. And then the last event we're going to have here is we're going to do another one of our Orion fundraisers where we invite artists to make work and kind of have them exist as a fundraiser within the space and within the greater shop space. And then we're going to clear all this stuff out of here and find a new home. So we are looking for tons of support in terms of board representation, additional assistance in helping us fundraise, real estate assistance. Please see Willis, our board president and co-founder. She's floating around with a big head of curly hair. Or please talk to me afterwards. And thank you all for being here. I'd love to open this up to questions. And I just want to reiterate one more time, like, it's freezing in this room. We're not unhappy that we're leaving. Like, this place has been wonderful for us. We were founded here. Like, we invented Aggregate Space Gallery, and we built these walls, and we built this place, but we built it in a building that we can't control. And so we have to have events that are freezing. Like, if it had started raining, you wouldn't have been able to hear us from this far away. So thank you for not raining. Somehow we've only managed to have the rain ruin like one public talk since we've been doing this. And you know, this building is not made for what we need it to be as a nonprofit. So we're going to move on and we're going to find a better situation. And there's no doubt in my mind we'll do it, but we're going to need a lot of hope. So here's the hope. Cheers to hope.
Space for artists. Woo!
Yeah. Cheers to that. And thank you, Leila.
Thank you.
This has been a wonderful experience. I'm sure you guys all have wonderful questions, both technical and conceptual, for either Leila or myself. Please ask.
I want to say too, this is this is my first like official solo show. And I don't think that without having a gallery like Aggregate Space and people as crazy as Conrad, I would be able to have this opportunity.
That means a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were founded on the idea of giving people their first solo show. Like that was always important to what we do here. I'd say about 2/3 of our solo shows have been the first for that artist, including people that have been working in the Bay Area for 10+ years and just never had a solo show. So that means a lot that you feel that way. Thanks. Tell everybody. Yeah, you too. Cool. So does anybody have any questions for Leila or myself? Do you want to go? Go ahead.
Did you choose the people in the I don't know, did you cast the people?
I did.
Okay, so you specifically chose them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And can you sort of elaborate on that a little bit?
Like how I chose them?
Yeah. And what they brought to your vision?
Yeah, I think each of them, I chose each of them for a different reason. This one here, I did a project called Blackberry Pastoral. So it was the first time I ever worked with a Blackberry piece. And he was the only person who made it into this video piece that was also from a previous work. And with each project, I like to have traces of different projects in it. And I mean, and aside from having the Blackberry, he did a wonderful performance, and he I think the ways that he interacts with blackberries is really complex and nuanced, and he understands that there's like, I mean, he's not afraid to
the piece
to really like cover himself.
And you have pictures and video of that piece on your website.
I do.
And he's prominent.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see it.
Yeah, I think his performance gave people the eroticism part of the Blackberry narrative, and I wanted that to carry over in this piece. And with the other actors, the singer in particular, I met him in summer of last year, and a lot of the male characters in any of my work kind of complicate or challenge ideas of masculinity for me. And I think that the ways that he embodies masculinity is tender. And I'm talking about the guy here on the right, your right. He's really tender, he's really gentle, but he's also like not afraid to wear a lace shirt. He also isn't afraid of being more feminine. And I think that whoever the lead character in my work is has to be someone who can embody multiple iterations or multiple just like embody gender complexities, I think. And that's with a lot of the other characters too, similarly. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that you would have to sort of, in order to get the nuance of what your message is, you would have to really sort of choose very specific people, and then I don't know how you would coach them to be so like delicate and thoughtful with your message. So that's more where I was coming from with that question.
Oh yeah, none of them are actually trained actors or actresses. I like to get people who are comfortable performing in their everyday life, and I like to put them in these situations and challenge them to do something that they've never done. Similarly to the performance last night.
Yeah.
Anytime anyone is playing an active role in a work that I'm doing, I don't give them a prompt. I don't prepare them. They just show up ready to participate. Sorry, my phone.
No. I can't tell.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I choose people. I choose people with the confidence that they're going to perform, and I don't expect them to perform in a specific way, just that they're going to be comfortable doing it.
I know.
I always have. But if someone else, I don't know.
No, go.
I have a super philosophical one.
Okay.
So in your essay, the line between, you have a question.
You have to give people context.
So the essay in the book, between Reading Horror, and there's an essay by Leila here titled The Line Between. And it does actually come before, the question comes before the dream sequence. And, I've been following her for a while. But you ask the question, can the fidelity of memories be relocated within the parameters of the real? And so, of course, when I'm asked a question, when I read anything, I try to answer it myself. So the philosophical part is, that's counting that your memories have some high or low fidelity, so that they're discernible. That's one. And I thought to myself, okay, the music definitely, the composition, like the score actually really brought that out for me, because sound and hearing is actually more vigilant of a sense than vision, actually, because you just fall asleep, you can't see anything, but you can always hear something. And so I guess my question is, did you have an answer when you were starting this process, when you were writing the piece, and how has your answer changed to your own question?
Did I have an answer when I started the piece?
Possibly, yeah. If you did, how has it changed? If not, what's the answer conclusion? Because for me, the answer was like the music and then the discernment between low and high fidelity of memory.
That's a good question.
You asked it.
With all, yeah.
Damn right.
With all my work, I think you also, know this. With all my work, I pose questions. That's, and it's not for anyone in particular to have answers to them, not even me. But I want whoever is coming to the work, whether they're reading it or watching it or hearing it, to leave with more questions than they have answers. For me in particular, with that question, I think this was me making this work was trying to figure out what, like, if my memory of this dream was high or low fidelity. Because I think that there have been moments where this is just to give everyone context, the dream sequence in this piece is a dream that I actually had and tried to recreate. But it's also something that I've questioned whether or not happened in real life. If it was premonitory in some way, not to sound wrong, witchy woo, but
that's okay.
And that question for me is I still to this day wonder how many permutations of this dream have happened in real life. How many times have I experienced the same thing where I'm gathered in this group of people and it feels happy, but then there's a violent turn, and the violence is subtle. And I think that I feel that way more often than, I can't say more often than I should. I think I just feel it more often than I anticipate. And so the fidelity, I think, fluctuates between low and high all the time.
Is it okay if I put you on the spot? I'm good at putting people on the spot.
Yep.
Yeah, no, is that good?
Sure.
I guess I also want to direct the question to you, because sound, I always found really magical taking like this one elective where I have a professor and he's just like, let's make a sound of a bird, and he just changed the C waves, and I'm like, how did you do that? And I think the question I had for you is, working with Leila, how did you envision, or how were you pushed out of your own comfort zone to make something possibly atypical, from your own practice with, I guess, Josh?
Well, I think
because Dorothy also probably looked at your website.
Well, I think there's, as far as I was aware, I think that Leila wanted to work with us because of partially what we do already. So there was that sort of, I think what we do, we tend to have is a very darker aesthetic, kind of moody, but in a place between kind of like scary and comforting in a weird way. So I think that worked already. But to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I think everything that we sent her originally for this piece, I
maybe 3% of it got used. I think we pretty much redid everything once we started to really get chunks of the piece, because you got to see it to be able to really know what's happening. So I think we really wanted to. I don't know. I guess we just wanted to. It's always about supporting the work, right? It's not about having things stick out or feel like they're competing. So I think when we recorded the cello that's in this piece, that was kind of the glue, I think, that kind of bridged a lot of these sections, because we were getting chunks of the piece and kind of composing around them, and then kind of figuring out how everything was going to kind of flow together. So to use different small sections of the cello being kind of slow and scrapey, or stretching it out, or doing different kinds of things to really bridge these gaps that we had. And it seems like it all kind of coalesced in the last 2 days, which was very interesting, because we like to have things like finished in advance, but just the way this piece worked, it didn't feel like anything really happened until like the last couple of days, which was interesting.
I have a question for you.
No.
Well, because you asked, like, Dorothy asked how you were, I guess, put out of your comfort zone. I feel like I kind of let you all just be free with how you created the sound.
Yeah.
But was there at any point, like, were my directions to you ever unreasonable, or like how did you work with my ideas? I
Is this going to become
I'm just curious, because I feel like there were times where the thing that I wanted to do was push you.
Well, the thing is that we really want to start doing more scoring work. So we want, and a lot of times our work is very intuitive as well. Like even our own personal work is very like, we just kind of sit down and things happen. So to have somebody want something from us was refreshing, because we could divorce ourselves from some of the creative decisions and just like try to realize something, which, like I said, we don't do as much. We usually sit down with an idea. It's usually just like we improvise together and then kind of mold that into something. So to have sort of like structure around decisions that we need to work towards, I think was really helpful for us.
I like that answer. I
mean, that's a great answer.
Yeah. I mean, and I feel like, just personally working with you was awesome. I mean, this was like one of my favorite installs that we've done in a really long time, because it was. I mean, largely a lot of it was figured out. The stuff that wasn't figured out was kind of easy to figure out. It's anytime I get to make a wall, I'm happy. It's always my favorite thing to do. You guys, if anybody hasn't seen the 2-minute ASG install in 2 minutes on our YouTube channel, you can watch how this install happened.
Instagram.
Oh yeah, it's on Instagram too. But we basically do a time lapse of changing the space from the previous show to the current show. So we're really close to wrapping this up. But I just wanted to. Yeah, I know my hands are facing. I just want to ask you one more question. That's something that I intended to address and kind of didn't, which is this idea of something that came up last night where you talked about performing Blackness in terms of performing both for other Black people and for yourself and for an audience. And then another chunk of the lecture created. You kind of presented this argument about toxic masculinity and performance of maleness and Blackness, and kind of set out a kind of description of using sports analogies largely that
With
like
the boxer.
with the both boxer and maybe you just implied football, but that's where I went with it. With the idea of fighting is okay, hugging during fighting is okay, but accidentally touching somebody is not okay. And that's something that I really responded to, because I think and one of the things we have in common is a dislike of toxic masculinity, amongst many other things. And I just, that description of it is something that I've never really heard before. And is that something that you kind of formulated, or do you grow that based on other conversations? I mean, just that specific, that thing that like you can touch if you're fighting, but only that.
I mean, I think that Elena wrote that piece in response to the dining scene.
Really?
Where the two men are feeding each other, and when it starts off tender and then grows into this really aggressive act, like who can feed who faster,
right.
more. It's just this idea that we're afraid of certain kinds of intimacy, and then even when we're sharing intimacies with people, that can sometimes grow into this violence, or this.
Right.
It can start to materialize in these really violent moments, in these violent spaces, and
it's the raw nerve. Once you open up the raw nerve with like being intimate,
you're exposed.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that with this piece, it was kind of a way that it was kind of something that I've experienced and witnessed happen over and over again with certain men in my life, where they are tender with each other, but then once they realize that they're participating in this really like in participating in a loving act, they turn and become violent. And I sometimes have to sit there uncomfortably and watch it because I can't interfere.
Right.
And I think that my positionality within that like triangle has changed. I think I've been each character, but mostly the woman who's just sitting and staring.
Right.
And so it's I think Elena was trying to articulate what all of the bodies in that moment are feeling.
Why I really like, and I felt like that part of the performance last night lent a lot of understanding of some of the other things that are going on in this that I didn't fully grasp. So I really appreciate that part of it. So that's it. Thank you. Thank you for that. And does anybody have any last questions, or we can wrap it up and have some more mimosa and we'll turn the show back on. One more.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to ask about the costuming and where it's like everyone's wearing a collar, and then with like the like friends sitting in a circle that looks like you got it from like a school uniform supplier, but these other collars look like they were more expensive. Like, what's up with that?
Which collars look more expensive?
Oh, like they're like I don't know. Then maybe it's just the lighting. Like, is it all the same?
There's a costume question.
Yeah, I know. It's just so first, why collars?
Yeah.
Well, there's a piece that I wrote about in the book actually that talks about my grandmother participating in this like schoolyard violence, and I think I'm really interested in like the control mechanisms that are built into education, in educational institutions in particular, and how that those are the earliest moments where I felt that I was performing blackness, and it felt very rigid. And I think the collars is just one way to represent that in material. And I think all of the actors, as soon as they put those polos on, they instantly felt uncomfortable, and had to act more formally. And that's sort of those are the ways that I wanted their bodies to respond to the costuming. And something as simple as putting on a polo shirt makes people feel uncomfortable, or like, you know, they become part of some hierarchical like authority. Yeah, like I became the authority to their like infantile behaviors. I don't know. It was weird. So I like to recreate those moments.
Did you like get them from a uniform store or something?
I got them online.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, uniform. You want to know where exactly I bought them from?
Oh yeah, I just didn't know if it was like. I didn't know if it was like.
I think they're all like Hanes.
Yeah.
They're Hanes. polo shirt.
Yeah.
But I love that you can still see the creases in them. It's like so clearly not like their clothing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like beautiful.
The eyes back and forth. Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you all for being here. Please excuse us for about 10 minutes while we change the show back to the way it's intended. And please help yourself to snacks, mimosa, muffins, cheese, wonderful things. And thank you all for coming. Thank you, Leila.
Thank you.
I'm still connected.
I am so connected.
Sorry, didn't notice.